Glenn Hebert. We call him Glenn the Geek. He's a guy in the podcasting community, just sold a radio network doing something a lot of people think would make money in the first place. So if you're somebody with an idea and you don't think it's going to make a lot of money, there it is. And I'm super happy we have him finally in Mom's Basement. The man behind the Horse Radio Network, Glenn Hebert, or as we call him, Glenn the Geek. How are you, man?
I'm terrific. How are you, Joe?
Well, I'm fantastic. And, you know, for people wondering about you and I being together today, this episode is normally about our stacker community, but you and I are in a different community, which I think we should encourage everybody to do. No matter what you do, there is magic in attending industry conferences. There's magic in getting together with the people you work with. And I know for you, networking's been a huge piece of getting your network to where it is.
Yeah, and it was a networking that introduced me to the person who introduced me to the person who ended up buying the business.
There it is.
So, and that was networking from 12 years ago. That was somebody that we had on our show 12 years ago and used to be a regular guest. And then I saw her at an industry conference last year and said, hey, I'm looking at maybe selling the company. And she said, I know our company's buying things. So within an hour, I had a meeting with the vice presidents of the company to talk about it. But that was only because of something I set up 12 years ago.
I remember a family member of mine always told me, I'd say, if you want to be successful, go to conferences. It's like, I'm too busy. I don't have time to go to conferences. I would assert that this family member didn't have time not to go. And he would have been more successful more quickly had he gone. But that's neither here nor there. So if you're thinking that, people, I think you need to reassess. Networking is everything.
And the reason I believe in going to conferences is the saying I use all the time when I'm doing keynote speeches at podcasting conferences. The first thing, you've seen it 100 times because you've been there. It's the saying, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. So by being at conferences, by being out and about in front of people, more and more people are aware of who you are. And in business, that's more important than who you know. It's the who knows you.
And it doesn't matter, by the way, whether you're an entrepreneur like Glenn or I are, guys, if you're working inside of a company, even inside of a company, there's people who are the key entrepreneurs, they call them. You've got them in your business, Glenn. There are people in your business, I will guarantee you, who are super entrepreneurial, but would rather work as part of the Horse Radio Network to make things happen.
And you know, I would say that within a corporate environment like that, it's even more important who knows you, right? That's even more important in an environment like that.
Well, we've got you on today because you have sold the Horse Radio Network, which you alluded to earlier. And congratulations, by the way. But before that, so when I first met you, I'm like, really? Horse Radio Network? Like three things I wouldn't put together at all. And yet you've got some amazing statistics, not just the number of people that listen to this, but the devoted number of fans. Tell me about deciding to niche down, because as you know, a lot of people, Glenn, a little too wide with what they're trying to do. You've got a very specific group of people you're trying to reach, and you did that very successfully.
Yeah, when I started that was the goal. It was to do shows about horses. But within even the horse world, there's 100 silos, right? And our mission statement at the Horse Radio Network is uniting the horse world one show at a time.
Isn't it? Wait a minute. Isn't it 100 stalls? I think it's 100.
It could be 100 barns, 100 thousands of horse shows.
I'm just like, we're so close to the right analogy.
Exactly. So, I mean, it was always the goal was to unite the horse world one show at a time. And by doing that, we had to niche down into individual shows to bring them all together under the network. And, you know, we have done that. There's been a lot of people who have started competing in different sports or who have tried different things because they've heard it on the shows. So I feel like that's one of our most successful things is we've gotten people to branch out from what they're doing with their horses now into something new and maybe ended up staying with that something new. So for us, even, you know, forget finances, that's been one of the most satisfying things is we've expanded people's knowledge base. And I think podcasting does that better than magazines do. And I'm owned by a magazine company, so we'll see how that goes. But because magazines, people tend to only read a magazine you're really interested in. Yet if you listen to a podcast because you find it entertaining, you know, Stacking Benjamins because you guys are a hoot, and then they learn something along the way about something they would have never bought a magazine about, right? They would have never went out and researched that topic on their own. We allow them to do that in a way I think no other medium does.
To your point, I was listening this morning, Glenn, to a mutual friend of ours. Lou Mangello runs the WDW radio network. We just saw him in Orlando, you and I, a couple months ago. But Lou was talking about the top, listen to this topic, to your point, the top restrooms in Walt Disney World.
Lou would know.
But I'm listening to this and I'm having a blast. And the funny thing is, I could care less. I could totally care less.
That's right.
And it was so fun on my morning walk to do that. And you're right, podcasting helps build community. But I want to go to this idea about niching down, because I would imagine that you could have the animal radio network, right? You could have done dogs and cats and ponies and horses and, sheep and all kinds of goats, whatever. Like where did the idea come from to just focus on horses all the time?
Well, I married a horsewoman. I married into this. This was not my thing in the beginning. So, and
by a horsewoman, you don't mean a woman with a long face.
That's correct. Yep. I mean a woman. Every horse person, most horse people are really addicted to horses. It's a unique group, which is made it ideal for niching down into the horse world, because I knew that this particular group, this is all they do. They spend all their money on their horses. We learn early as horse boyfriends and then horse husbands not to say it's me or the horses, because it's you. You're gone.
You're gone.
You're out. So there's, I knew that this was a market of addicted people who didn't have availability of this particular content. But then I knew I even had to niche it down further into things that they're interested in already, so that they start listening, so we could introduce them to other things. So that's why there's 42 shows on the Horse Radio Network all about horses, is because, the niches within the niches.
42 shows. Mm-hmm. That's a whole different episode of this, guys, about how to organize 42 different shows. Let me ask you this, though. Let's talk about selling it, because clearly it became a valuable commodity. Did you build it to sell? Did you build it in a way where you're thinking about selling?
I did. So that was intentional. So when we started years ago, I always knew, I hoped someday that podcasting would become a thing. But when I started, it was not a thing. When I started, you couldn't listen on a phone. There wasn't a phone. So you listened on your computer pretty much. And I always wanted to be number one in the horse world and podcasting when podcasting became a thing. And then Serial came along and started to help make podcasting a thing. And
we got a huge bump, by the way. I don't know about you. And obviously finances have nothing to do with Serial, but I feel like when Serial finished, that first season finished, millions of people just started searching their app for other things they might be interested in.
That's right. So they came in, with a crime drama and went, oh, I like horses. Let me search horses. And they found us. And then the other thing that really, really helped us out was COVID. Because more and more people started listening.
That's not a great sentence.
No, it's true, though.
You might want to back off that sentence.
It helped us out. I'm not saying it helped. It didn't help the world out, but it helped podcasting out, because more and more people just became aware of podcasting. And, our numbers grew because of COVID. We went up, I think it was almost 40% that year in downloads. So those two events really brought podcasting to where it is today, and brought podcasting onto the radar of media corporations in the horse world, who were going, hey, look, we tried this podcasting thing. It didn't work for us. We need help. So we do magazines, we do video. Now we know we need podcasting as the third leg of that tripod. And that's where we came in. And then we had 3 different companies that were looking at us, all media conglomerates that were looking at us in the horse world. And it was the third company that came into the picture when I met this person at dinner that night at a trade show conference. It was the third one that came into the picture that we actually ended up selling to.
When you sell a company like yours, you obviously value it on a multiple of your revenue over a period of time. How did you have that all ready to go? Did you know that number? Did you have to involve accountants? Tell me about the pros that you have to involve if you decide to sell a company.
Well, we had a really good mergers and acquisitions attorney. First thing, if you're going to sell a company of any size, have that. Because I know a little bit about contracts. I've been doing business. I was a financial planner for a lot of years. But I didn't know what half of this contract said. I had no idea what the words meant. So having a mergers and acquisitions attorney is mandatory from the beginning, from the start. And I did. The other thing is figuring out the value. Well, because podcasting is so weird and different and it's new and there's not really a lot of standard operating procedures for selling a podcast to company. It was kind of a guess, to be honest. It was okay. And it was also, what do I want? What do I want out of this at this point for my retirement eventually and for what we want to do in life or what my wife and I want to do? Because she's working with us full time too. So, and that's what we kind of threw a dart at the dartboard. And I wish it was more scientific than that. But you know what? Sometimes in business, it's not.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in an industry that doesn't have set rules.
How much back and forth negotiation was there?
Fortunately for me, but unfortunately for me, they didn't negotiate the price. And then I went, damn, I should have went higher. So that was, so I did, got what I wanted, but, then I was like, oh. No, but there was other things I would say it wasn't the price and that it was a negotiation point. We did go back and forth on just paragraphs in the contract. It was the nitpicky business stuff that we went back and forth on. We probably ended up talking more about, I wasn't even say it was negotiating, but talking more about my consulting agreement, which came, as the second part. We sold the company, that was the first agreement, and then the consulting agreement to stay on was the second part.
Well, that's what I was going to ask next, was because I knew from talking to you that you got this consulting agreement. I would think the company would be valued higher. You will get more money if you're able to help them smooth out the rough edges, right? To be there for a little bit afterwards.
I don't think they would have bought it unless I had stayed on for a period of time. They wouldn't have bought it. Just because, again, you know this from being in this industry as long as I have, that there's not a lot of us out there that have been around as long as we have doing podcasting. So to hire somebody to come in and take over exactly the way we're doing it and to continue that is difficult. So I don't think they would have bought it. They were buying me and what I built, but I think first they were buying me. And I don't mean that to sound conceited. It's just true.
Sure. No, it is true. And I think that's an important thing for anybody, that if you're going to sell your business, you might want to sell it before you're ready to be done working, just so you build in this, I think, it makes it so much easier for people to buy your business if you're coming along for at least a little bit. How is your job today different than it was last year when you were running the company?
We're just getting to the end now of all the transition stuff of moving everything over, billing and all of that we had to do. So right now, what's going to happen, instead of being in charge of everything, I'm in charge of content. So there's a sales department that I work with, but they do the selling. I was always doing the sponsor selling before. And then there's a web team rebuilding the website. As you know, we do all of that stuff when you own a business. Yeah. And so basically when all settles out after the transition stuff, my job is content, developing new shows, working with current shows to make them better.
Did you have any attrition of personnel when you told them that?
No, actually all the shows stayed and we really didn't. No,
that's fabulous. My last question is this. I've always said, Glenn, that podcasting is so fun. I could imagine like an oxygen tank here. Remember when Don Imus was alive? And by the way,
he did have it there.
I'm not making a commentary about what Don Imus said or what he did. I'm just saying one thing about Don Imus was he had oxygen and he was still on the radio. I want to be that guy. Like that is total. I have so much fun doing this. I would do that. Is that you? Are you going to keep on the show?
Yes, I do Horses in the Morning, which is one of the longest running independent daily podcasts in the world. We're at 31, almost 3,200 episodes. So I do want to keep doing that.
But by the way, Glenn always uses that as a flex whenever we tell people we're on episode like 1300. Glenn's one of the few people on earth who goes,
you'll catch up sometime.
I can't, because you do more per week than I do. But Glenn's one of the few people in the world who can go, oh, how cute. That's so cute, Joe.
That's really nice. That's a nice little number you have there. But anyway, I hope to be doing that after this contract's even up, the consulting agreement. Part of it is that I have the opportunity to stay on and still host Horses in the Morning. If all I had to do was get up in the morning and be on the mic with my friend Jamie, who's done all those episodes with me since the beginning 13 years ago, it's therapy for us. So if we could get on and do that every day and talk to fun people and I don't have to worry about anything else, there's heaven for you right there.
Well, for all of our horse fans that already know who you are and they heard in this show that you sold the business, maybe I'm sure you've said it on Horses in the Morning,
Yep.
but that last line from Glenn should have relaxed you that he's going to be around for a good
Yeah,
long
I plan
time.
on being here for a little. That was a concern. We had more concerns from the listeners than we did from anybody that works with us.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, my favorite podcast. Some of them,
Yeah.
when they changed host, I was like, I can't do this anymore.
It's true. It is absolutely true. And that show, especially, Horses in the Morning is so big and it's so ingrained in people. We've been doing it 13 years every day. So, we've been there been through babies and marriages and divorces and deaths. And, we've been there in the whole life cycles of people.
You're such a show off.
You'll get there someday.
Someday, Grasshopper. We'll link on our show notes page to Horses in the Morning and the Horse Radio Network because these guys do a lot of horsing around.
Very, very good. Hey, one of my goals in life, one of my bucket list items was to be on this show. You know that. I've been bugging you about it for years.
Yes.
I've been bugging you about it for years. That's true.
The bar's too low, Glenn. The bar's way too low. I feel like
now I can leave the basement.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. Could just hang out in our basement now. Glenn Hebert, thanks for hanging out with us, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.